Well, it's my pleasure to start off this presentation and try and, as best we can, share with you the path we followed over the past now 25 years. We started in 1997, and Ricardo and I were part of this international group of professionals who had been working together for 2 years on a project funded by the Dutch Ministry of Development, involving government organization, NGOs, and small-scale farmers in Kenya, the Philippines, and Peru. And the objective of the project was to envision and research resilient agri-ecosystems. Our work together had been so exciting, and we had managed to build synergies and to develop innovative methods for building consensus, collaboration, and facilitating co-learning processes. When our involvement in the project ended, we decided to form an association that would allow us to continue working and learning together. All of us contributed to a vision for ISG that would allow us to collaborate virtually and in person, although we would be based in 6 different countries from 3 continents within 6 months. Over the 25 years, we've been involved in many different kinds of arrangements in Latin America, a lot of places in Africa with different configurations. We've done consultancies among 2 people. We've had projects that we took part in. The signing of the document of the initiation of ISG was on May 3rd of 1997. And Karin, who's here with us, and Ricardo were on the board with Clive Lightfoot at that time. And there's the judge who let us have it. And at that time, the Dutch government allowed for international NGOs. ISG is an international NGO, kind of arrangement that does not exist anymore. We're registered in the Netherlands, but we're an international organization. You may have asked why we're called Linked Local Learning. Well, the fact of the matter is that the idea of linking local learning was one of the strongest foundations of the conversations we had during the time that we were discussing where the association that we wanted should go. And the idea from the beginning was that scientists, development specialists, ground level government organizations, and farmers and local people should be able to learn together. What we were really concerned with was, one way or another, getting indigenous knowledge together with scientific knowledge, together with experience, and seeing how we could build toward the future. So linked local learning has been, let's say, the conceptual framework for ISG from the very beginning.
One of the main ideas when we started ISG was that we didn't want to be the owners of the budgets running projects. And the Danish development agency, Danida, gave us a budget and allowed us to go and see if stakeholders in Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania would want to be in charge of the project. So these pictures are from the exploratory visits to Kenya. The picture with Reg is in Tanzania. This is what we're able to do in each of the countries. This is the example from Kenya, where we basically tried to bring all of these stakeholders together with the idea that if you wanted to do systems change, you had to improvise arrangements with multiple stakeholders. I think a lot of the ideas from Niels Rolling and Paul Engel with rapid appraisal of knowledge systems were informing us. We were able to organize a first Link Local Learning workshop in Nyeri, Kenya, with all of these different stakeholders. It was so encouraging to see that the dynamic of this evolving. And this, you can get a sense of many tools that those of you new to ISG are familiar with. Back then, we thought they were fairly new. But what was unique was this handing over the decision-making to multiple stakeholders. We did a lot of follow-up work in East Africa with the National Agricultural Advisory System called NAD, so working with government to do local training and producing a lot of training kits and materials. And from then, more work came up. Maria led this work with NARO, National Agricultural Research Organization. It morphed into doing work with multiple stakeholders and actually planning and developing work plans for new agricultural systems in these three countries, mostly in Uganda and Kenya. And then Danita brought us all together. And this was a meeting in Tune in Denmark, 2001, where all of our East African partners and the ISG team came together. And out of this workshop came out a book where we summarized all of the learnings in those countries and other learnings that we will now report on that were happening at the same time in Peru and some of them in Canada. And at that time, as Maria said, many of us moved away from the Netherlands. Reg Noble and myself came back to Ontario, and we actually did workshops with a rural organization in Ontario, and it was the first time that they had seen some of these visual tools. So put a little note here saying methods from the Global South came to the North, and some of these activities were reported in that booklet.
Ricardo and Reg were working in Canada. Edith and I were doing some work in Peru on a project that Edith was leading, supported by REMISP in Chile. And the idea was to evaluate a process of participatory action research with small farmers in a small community in Peru over a 10-year period, and to see how that had been able to develop over time in terms of bringing about certain changes and advances with the farmers' groups.
We then started publishing and telling our stories. So we then got invited to publish also by Cornelia Flora, and this was an article that involved many of our partners also from East Africa. And so we were trying to sort of bring some of our practitioner work into the literature. We were starting to make sense of what we were doing here, and we were excited to move from participatory rural appraisal to linked local learning.
In 2002, Ricardo and I were invited by FAO. They asked us if we would try and help them solve conflicts in the fishery sector of Chile, which at the time was a fiery confrontation between small fishers and the large companies. At the time, we told them that we actually were not into conflict management as such, but in helping people vision the future. And so we did a 5-day workshop in Chile that involved university people, government officials, small fishers, and the large companies with their legal representatives to talk about what kind of a future they could envision for working together. It was a very interesting experience. We published an article on that particular experience.
Members of ISG took these lessons elsewhere. So in this case, Clive Lightfoot did some work in Ghana with other partners that were local. Maria and I were invited to do a session at IFAD in Rome, right during a World Cup. So that's a massive challenge to keep a workshop going when Italy is playing and you're in Rome. But this was trying to bring approaches from the Global South into headquarters of multilateral agencies. This horrible diagram reflects a very difficult experience working with the FAO Livelihood Support Program that also Maria and I did for a while on behalf of ISG.
This is a workshop that Ricardo and I facilitated that was supported by CUSO in Nigeria. And the workshop was to bring together a group of people from government agencies and universities who had been selected to support programs in local communities. And so the workshop was geared to give them an experience with the kinds of participatory processes that we were skilled in developing. We facilitated it as such, and at the same time, they learned how to use the tools. And this is a workshop that Ricardo Caloy and I did for Bioversity International. It was part of the Bioversity program looking at how to bring a gender perspective into scientific research. This is a whole group of researchers who were working in West Africa and who were looking for ways to include gender in the perspective in their research programs. This particular workshop was part of a fairly long collaboration that we had with Bioversity International, which also included work in India and in other places, which allowed us as an organization to, together with EPCDM, fund the workshop in Maastricht.
The ECDPM workshop was an intent to bring together people that were doing similar things in the line of linking local learning. Of course, that was quite a difficult issue, because how do you define it? We now see it as a very clearly explained conceptual framework. Very interesting lessons we applied there is that it was more important to ask the right questions than to say the right things. We had to sort of combine these different perspectives, and that's exactly what linked local learning is about, is be able to link up different perspectives and each learn about whatever is in the interest of the learner. So I think that was the interesting part of the Maastricht seminar. It was also meant to renew our commitment to these types of processes and to renew ISG in the sense of finding more like-minded people that want to work this way and want to share their experiences with others. I think also in that respect it was quite successful, but it's produced a new dynamic and many new members, and in that sense it helped getting us where we are now.